Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Brianna. Subscribe down below for weekly uploads. So today is kind of a chill chit chat video. This is my first time filming while sitting in my bed. It's super relaxing and I'm just going to be sharing my experiences substitute teaching for ESL, which is English Second Language. Guys, I know things are really crazy right now in the world and most schools are closed now, mine included, so I have not been to work in I think about 3 weeks and counting. But I'm just going to continue filming my planned content as usual and sharing some story times, tips, and all that stuff with you guys. So if you don't know what English Second Language is, it's a class for kids who their home language is something other than English. Here in Texas, more often than not, it's Spanish. I actually just did a quick Google search, let me see. So in Texas, the top spoken language besides English are Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, Tagalog, German, French, Hindu. So mostly Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese are the top 3 ones that are spoken. So basically different schools, and this could vary by state or even by city, county, whatever you want to call it, have different types of programs for kids who are either learning English or maybe English just isn't their first language. So here in Texas, whenever a kid is enrolled in school, they ask the parent, does this kid speak another language at home? If the answer is no, then no problem, you just go into general education classes. If the answer is yes, then they do have to be tested to see where their language proficiency is. So they could be maybe that they just spoke English and Spanish at home and their English is perfectly fine, but they still have to just test it. Or it could be that maybe they speak no English at all and they speak Vietnamese or another language at home. So it's kind of a big scale of different types of kids, where their English language proficiency is, and different types of programs depending on your school. So ESL is basically the program that encompasses all of that. So it could be maybe this kid just moved here from a different country and they speak no English at all, so obviously they're going to need more help. Maybe their English is pretty good but they still make a couple of grammatical errors, they need help writing, and so depending on where their level of English is will depend on how much time they spend in general education classes, which are taught in English, versus in an ESL classroom with the assistance of an ESL teacher or even an ESL teacher aide. So I have subbed for ESL several times, both in middle school and high school. I've never done it for elementary or anything lower than 7th grade. So let me just talk about what it was like. So the first time that I subbed for ESL was for middle school, 7th and 8th grade, but this was at the end of a semester. So this was December, and honestly, they weren't really doing much. The semester was almost over, and so pretty much all I had to do was just play movies for them. But it was also a really good experience to interact with these kids. So honestly, I love subbing for ESL because it's just something that was out of my comfort zone, but now it's something that I love to do. Of course, I haven't been to school in a while because of everything going on, but so that first time that I subbed, I did just have to play movies, but kind of in the beginning of taking attendance and introducing myself, I did take some time to kind of chat with some of the kids, and I had a mixture. So each class was different. Most of my classes, the kids spoke pretty well English, but they were more comfortable speaking in their native language amongst each other, which was mostly Spanish. So pretty much throughout the class, they, between themselves, were mostly only speaking Spanish. Okay, so I know a little bit of Spanish. I am half Latina, but I definitely am nowhere close to being fluent, and so I really love subbing for ESL because I kind of like to challenge myself to try to utilize my Spanish skills and understand what's going on, and so I love kind of just listening to their conversations and trying to decode it, trying to pick up with what I can. So the point of ESL is to kind of help them learn their English, so you definitely don't want to try to just solely speak to them in whatever their native language is, but every now and then it's perfectly fine, and some of the kids were even teaching me Spanish, and so of course I introduced myself, took roll, did all that stuff in English, but like as the class was going on, sometimes they would kind of just try to like teach me different words, interact with me, or I would be curious and hear them talking like, hey, like I know what that means, what does that word mean? They would tell me. So it was just a really wholesome interaction. There was one particular class that I had who this kid was, I think he was pretty new, and he spoke zero English whatsoever, so I could not communicate with him because I don't have the skills to actually have a full-on conversation in Spanish with someone who's fluent. And so thankfully the kids who did speak better English kind of served as translators for me whenever I did need to communicate with that kid. So subbing for ESL, you will encounter students with various levels of English language proficiency. If it's Spanish, more often than not, if you're subbing for an ESL class, some of the other kids are going to be able to help you if you do need to communicate with somebody. So fast forward to a recent experience I had in February. I was subbing for ESL at the high school level, but I was in the same classroom for the same teacher for an entire week. Guys, I usually only maybe pick up shifts for 1, maybe 2 days in a row. It's kind of just like you're in and you're out, and you don't really have time to get to know the kids, and you kind of just see them for 1 day, and then chances are, unless you return to that school and happen to see them again, you really don't ever interact with them again. So this particular time was actually at the high school that I graduated from, so it was kind of cool to go back and be a sub for the school that I went to from 9th through 12th grade. So I was in this ESL class, and let me explain it. So I was subbing for an ESL teacher's aide, but the way that this was set up is that there was 2 different ESL classes right next to each other. I was in one by myself, and then next door was the head ESL teacher in her own classroom. And so I got to spend a week in there, and it was definitely such a learning experience. I would say that mostly, maybe like 95% of the kids that I had throughout the entire week spoke Spanish. There were a couple who spoke Arabic, and I think one who maybe spoke Vietnamese, if I'm not mistaken. So throughout this entire week, like I mentioned before, depending on their level of proficiency, or even if they speak perfect English, it kind of feels like this ESL classroom is kind of like a safe space for them. So if you think about it, the entire rest of the day when they're just going throughout their general classes, only English is spoken, maybe not many of their classmates speak Spanish or whatever their native language is. When they come to this ESL classroom with 10, 15, 20 other kids who all speak Spanish, it's kind of like a little community within itself, and they are mostly more comfortable speaking Spanish. So throughout the entire day as I was subbing, mostly all of my kids were solely speaking Spanish to each other. Most of them, if they needed to talk to me or tell me something, they would switch to English, but some of them knew very little to probably no English. And so as a substitute teacher, it's my job to be able to communicate with these kids. And so sometimes, whether it would be me having to pick up my Spanish skills and trying to communicate with whatever I was trying to say, sometimes the other kids who did speak better English would kind of step in and help me. Thank you so much to those kids. And so it's kind of just like case by case depending on where those kids are at, who you have helping you, and things like that. But even if you don't want to be an ESL teacher, I highly recommend sub for ESL a few times, because these kids are not the typical kids that you see in the classroom, and it's really hard to learn a second language, especially English. English is so hard to learn for no reason. I feel like throughout their general classes, lots of them might get made fun of for having accents or maybe not knowing the proper words. And so subbing for ESL is really kind of like, this was their safe space. And so there was one particular kid, so I was subbing for Monday through Friday an entire week in the same classroom. On Tuesday, we got a new kid from El Salvador, and he had just came to the States about 4 days ago. So he was literally brand new to the country. He spoke no English at all. He did speak Spanish, and so he was able to talk with the other kids, but as far as communication between myself and him, he did not speak any English. So for most of the week, it wasn't really a problem, because like I said, the other kids were very helpful in kind of communicating between us, and also the main ESL teacher, who was right next door, would come over and kind of help him out and get him situated into things. There was one day where it just so happened to be that that main ESL teacher was away in a different part of the building. She was busy, free, and I ended up being alone with this kid. So the way ESL works is either they stay in this classroom the entire day just to learn basic English language arts, English, stuff like that. Or they go to their general classes, and if they need help, then they'll come down to that classroom. So that's what had happened, and I ended up being alone with him. He had been sent to math class, and since he didn't speak any English, the teacher had just sent him back to the ESL classroom. So here I am. I do not speak Spanish. He speaks no English, and I have to figure out how can I help him. He did not know how to do this algebra. How can I help him do his math? How can I explain how to do it? First of all, math is hard, so even in English, it would have been pretty difficult to explain how to do. I think they were doing like parabolic something with graphs, and so even in English I would have struggled to explain, but I had to try to explain in Spanish. And so I really tried to use as much Spanish as I could. There was definitely a very strong communication barrier, and so what ended up happening was we both got out our cell phones, and the little Spanish I know, I told him to download this app, and we used Google Translate to kind of go back and forth. Technology is such a lifesaver. There's another app, so Google Translate, you can either type it in, so I would type it in English, translate to Spanish, show him my phone, he would read it, and then do vice versa back to me. You can also hold down the microphone. Let me show you guys. So if you're in Google Translate, you can either type stuff in and translate it. You can also take a picture of it, which we tried to do with his algebra textbook to translate it from English to Spanish. It does a pretty good job, but it doesn't accurately translate everything. You can take a picture. You can also use the voice application and speak, and it translates it. So, okay, so let me translate from English to Spanish. Hi, my name is Brianna, and I am recording a video right now.
Hola, mi nombre es Brianna y estoy grabando un video en este momento.
So that's pretty cool, and we kind of use that to communicate back and forth. There was another app that I can't remember what the name of it was. I think it was Say Hello. Hey guys, editing Brianna here. So the app is called Say Hi, and I'm going to show you guys because I opened the app and actually found some of the conversations still saved in there. And so I told him I speak a little bit of Spanish, but I'll try to help you. And then under that I put, if you get this app on your phone, it can help you translate from Spanish to English. So I told him to download Say Hi, and then also Google Translate. From Google Translate, I also had a saved conversation in there that I'll show you guys. So he was kind of starting to get noticeably frustrated from the lack of communication because he didn't understand English, and also from the content. So he did say that it had been a couple of years since he had been in school. He was starting to get kind of frustrated. It was only like his first week in the United States, and so Google Translate, I just typed a message for him. And it says, I know it seems like school is hard, but after a while you will learn some English and it will get easier. In America, people who speak English and Spanish can get better jobs and more opportunities. So I was kind of trying to just uplift him and tell him that being bilingual is going to be amazing. It's hard right now, but in the end, you'll learn 2 languages. You'll be more marketable for jobs, have better opportunities, and stuff like that. So that was what happened between the app community. Say Hi, something like that. So technology would definitely be your best friend if you ever struggle to communicate with a student. Google Translate has pretty much every language, so if it's Arabic, Vietnamese, Chinese, some other languages might be more difficult if they use a different alphabet system if you're trying to teach somebody how to write or something like that. But technology will be your best friend. So this video is probably all over the place, but all in all, I love studying for ESL. If you live in Texas or even anywhere in the US, Spanish is a very commonly spoken language. Definitely, if you're in high school, take a Spanish course, take a college Spanish course. I had to take 4 semesters of Spanish in college, and I think 2 in high school, so I do know a little bit of Spanish. Yo hablo un poquito español, pero mi español es mal. don't roast me for my Spanish. So the little bit of Spanish that I did know definitely was helpful, but even if you don't speak Spanish, even if you don't want to teach for ESL, you're going to have kids in your class. If you do become a teacher, you're going to have kids who struggle with English, who English isn't their first language. Please understand that English is a super hard language to learn. On top of learning the content, they're having to learn the basics of grammar, punctuation, and all that stuff. English is so difficult to learn. I think in my study material, they said it takes 5 to 7 years to fully become fluent in a language. So 5 to 7 years. So whenever you hear a kid or even just a person that has an accent, don't make fun of them. Keep in mind that they probably speak multiple languages, and that is just what comes along with that. So I love subbing for ESL. If you have never subbed for ESL, definitely do that. Also, if you're thinking about becoming an English teacher, nowadays lots of schools want you to have that ESL testing experience. So here in Texas, it's called the ESL supplemental, which is basically just an additional test. It's shorter than the regular content exams to kind of teach you how to teach somebody who is learning English, learning about all the factors that go into that. And so I did take and pass that test. And if you want to teach English, I really suggest studying for that ESL test. Whatever state you're in, it may be called something different, but definitely, because you will encounter kids who do not speak English or who are learning English, so you can definitely benefit from getting that ESL experience. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video wasn't too random and rambling, but please be sure to subscribe down below for more content, quarantine content, because I have nothing else to do. I do plan on, right after this video, making a video about my experience subbing for special education, so be on the lookout for that one. Hope you guys are staying safe and staying home as much as possible. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye y'all.